Did Merc sabotage backfire? How do you convert a P2 into a P8 and a P1 into a P4? Welcome to Tinfoil Helmets, your occasional spicy hot take roundup of the latest F1 rumours, all with almost believable conspiracy theories to back them up. Everything here is carefully researched for hours to make sure it is totally founded in logic, reason, and truth. Or not. Who knows? Shall we see if we got anything right with our amazing predictometer?
I mean, we were bold for Spa. I think we were truly trying to, make something happen, manifest some sort of chaos, and...
Go out with a bang.
We're no longer doing this podcast. I mean, that'll be great for my weekend.
No, but... go out for the season, for the summer break. Get ready, go big, go home.
Sure, all
they're going to go big, and then they're going to go home.
Okay.
So, shall we see? We said Max would dominate. No. Max frustration. We thought there might be some more of that. No, kind of. He was very compliant, but we'll talk about that later.
Not enough to get a point from.
Not enough to get a point. Rain, because Spa.
Yes.
Smoke bomb, because Spa.
No. I'm disappointed with everybody, with the security on the Kemmel Straight.
Yeah, sorry, it's because they were all prepped to scream for Sonny and Joshua. Russell out-qualifies Lewis? No. Lewis slapping it in there into P3/P2. Checo doesn't race, and it's only one car.
Might as well have been.
Yeah, might as well have been. Safety car, which, to be fair, is actually the one thing that surprised me in this. There wasn't. It's now been 5 races in a row without a safety car.
And they were hyping it up on the pre-broadcast of 4 out of the last 5 races at Spa have had a safety car.
And Lewis got the call on lap 6 or 4 saying left and coast, because everybody had planned for a safety car into La Source, but no. Here we are. As always, the most important thing is, are we still in the Baseball Hall of Fame at this point?
I think we're dropping out of Baseball Hall of Fame mode, but, that's okay, because, we're still hitting well above the Mendoza line. We're kind of terrible at predictions at this point in time, but I think some of this is we're just trying to will some interesting racing to happen, hoping for the best and getting a strategy race, which was fine.
Yeah. But before we talk about the race, shall we talk about between-race drama?
I mean, that's where we start.
Yep. It was only 1 week, but the Sauber team decided that they're not doing very good and fired their team principal/CEO, which is really Audi. But really the big news is less that he got fired and who they replaced him with. They replaced him with Matteo Binotto. Spinella!
He's back!
He's the backer!
Yeah!
I'm fascinated by this because from what I read somewhere on the internet, there was a massive brouhaha behind the scenes, and Audi was all annoyed, and the Sauber people were all annoyed, and nobody wanted to talk, and it was a total train wreck. And the theory is that Binotto, because he's basically Switzerland, which is ironic given that they are in Switzerland, will help meld the teams together and make them create the most amazing thing in the world. But he is only the team principal and technical director. He's not CEO.
There's definitely a joke here somewhere, either about Switzerland is needed to keep the peace between an Italian and a German, or the Germans are once again relying on an Italian to try to get the job done, and he won't be able to.
Yeah.
There's some historical jokes here we can make.
Yeah. I don't think there's much more to say on this, other than I think it suggests that maybe Audi's already in trouble, so wait for them to sell the team to someone before we get to 2026.
Can you sell the team before you've even really bought the team?
Yes, because they own enough of the team that they because I think they're at 75% now. Or they did this earlier in the year. They decided to complete the transaction early, because what was the point in waiting 3 years to buy the bloody team? I didn't understand that.
Fair enough.
Anyway, we're going to go to a little mini section here, which is all Alpine, all the news, because all the things have happened for Renault. We'll start off with the nice, light-hearted and excitement. There was a special Deadpool livery.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Sorry, Deadpool, Wolverine, I mustn't forget, because that is an important part. They only chose to go for Red Bull, Deadpool on the cars, and so they were only red. I don't know why they didn't make one bright yellow and one red. It just seems so logical. And they didn't even do it for the race suits. They had them both in this, but they did go for the helmets. Is there a regulation that says the cars have to be the same color?
I think there actually is, because there was the one year where Like BAR was going to try to run like the Lucky Stripe one on one and one on the other, and so they have to be the same.
So they did the compromise on that one where they split the livery down the middle. That's what they should have done here.
Yeah. I think it's really good that they decided not to like do the race suits, because then you have somebody dressed up like Wolverine, probably Ocon, and then you have somebody dressed up like Deadpool, and they're just going to crash into each other. Let's not forget that Ryan Reynolds is now an investor in the Alpine F1 team, which is and part of the reason why this happens.
I believe McElhenney is too.
Yes.
Which I'll come back to, because I think that's an important point given the other news that also is apparently coming on with Alpine. Renault apparently are going to give up on the engines. Alpine are going to give up on the engines and go to Merc engine, gearbox, and rear suspension. I don't understand why, at this point, Renault remain in F1. Like, if you're not going to do the engines as a car company, like, why bother? Like, it's literally pointless.
Well, Audi's not doing the engines, are they?
Yeah, they are. They've got their own. They are the whole works. They're building their own engines, brand new for 2026.
Aston Martin doesn't do their own engines, but they don't even do their own engines with their own road cars.
Exactly, very true. This is only clearly happening. They're only doing this because it's the slow roll of trying to sell the team. Because you can't sell the team if you haven't given them an engine, because you don't want to get out of the engine business, because you want to go make that for everybody else. So this clearly means that Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds are going to buy the whole of Alpine and turn it into the Wrexham racing team. And it will be this great TV show. It'll put Drive to Survive to shame, and it's going to be amazing.
I don't know about that, just purely because, like, I assume you've watched Welcome to Wrexham?
Yes.
Great show if you haven't watched it.
Love it.
They sometimes realize, like, oh, we're spending how many millions to get this thing done? Oh, this is not quite the best investment we thought it was. And it's like, oh, man, you think you're losing money on a, now third-tier English football team. Wait till you see Formula One.
Who are basically buying a fifth-tier Formula One team.
I don't know if anybody's actually figured out how to make money on a Formula One team. The exception might be Ferrari, and part of that is because you convinced the FIA to give you money as a legacy team, which is weird.
Williams is a legacy team too.
But I don't think they get the money like Ferrari does.
They do not get the Ferrari money, that's for sure.
I think there's something, if you're trying to keep teams in the sport, keep interest in the sport, like, it would make sense to me to, like, I think McLaren is a legacy team at this point in time. You know, Williams is a legacy team at this point in time. Sauber's like maybe. Merc's definitely not. Red Bull's also definitely not. But, you know, there's just some teams that have been around for forever in the sport. And, like, there should be a thing of, oh, you hit, like, 25 years of 30 years of service in Formula One. You get access to this pot of money.
I think that would make sense, but that's really not how it works. I believe Mercedes is profitable, but I don't know, because they don't get the recent financials suggested they got very little money from Mercedes, and therefore Mercedes, the car company, and therefore we're now profitable. So
Daimler, technically, I believe the Daimler group.
Yeah, exactly. And the last bit of Alpine news, they fired their team principal so he can focus on other motorsports at Alpine. Again, I would refer you to the previous point that Alpine's getting ready to sell the team. There is no replacement been appointed, but it's convenient that a former team principal who is known to have a championship-winning streak in his career has recently rejoined. He would never cheat, though, not again. He's never done it before either.
I think we found the word of this podcast.
What's that?
Cheat.
Huh, that's a surprise for you later, people.
Like they haven't watched the race.
Also, I'd like to point out, if you work for Alpine and you're still at the team when you come to the Belgium Grand Prix, you might be concerned about your job, because it's now 2 years in a row they've fired their team principal.
Well, I think as long as you don't expect or get the team principal job, you're fine.
That's fair. I will concede that point.
Yeah.
The last bit of not quite Alpine news, but it's kind of Alpine news. Ocon, former Alpine driver who got fired but still gets to drive the car, has signed a multi-year contract with Haas. I think this is most important in the context of Oliver Behrman, whose career is clearly over because Ocon's just going to drive into him because he's a...
I also think it's interesting that this is also the third time that Ocon has immediately followed where Nico Hülkenberg was.
This is beautiful. I love this. This means that Ocon's going to Audi soon.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that would have to be it.
And then two more little bit of news before we get into the kind of starting on the race kind of stuff. Max took a 10-place penalty because his engine exploded earlier in the season, and then Yuki took a 60-place penalty because his engine's probably going to explode later in this season. I think this raises a big question: is there something wrong with the Red Bull engine? Because it seems a bit broken, but maybe it's just a long season. We don't know yet.
I mean, it is the longest season in F1 ever.
Indeed.
And they,
Did you see Yuki's reaction when he was interviewed?
60.
He was like 60, and then apparently after the race he says, "I think I did pretty well to end up in P17, given that I started in Zandvoort."
It's pretty good. Pretty good. I still think if you have 60 places of grid penalties, you should start where 60 places down the grid would be.
I wholly agree that if your place of grid penalty should be physically where you get located as you bounce down the grid, and it should not be that, you're last. You should be like round, the previous 3 corners.
Round can't even see the lights.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you need to do.
The funny thing there would be like, technically a pit lane start couldn't happen until after Yuki went past, like the light went on. So like if you ended up with like somebody with a 60 place grid penalty and there was a pit lane start, like they would be stuck in the pits for so long.
That's actually really interesting to think about, the strategy choices you would make if you decided your car was set up so badly you needed a pit lane start. That's really interesting.
Actually, that'd be a great way to get around your 60 place grid penalty, because then I'll just take the pit lane start and then I'm out as soon as the pack goes by, rather than having to start from like the other side of the bus stop chicane.
Exactly. The FIA, as we say in many episodes, we should hire us because we can get this right.
People say they want entertainment value. We can help you with this. I would also just love to see like some Belgian out there on like Friday morning just being like, he takes how many places of grid penalties, and like stepping off all the grid boxes and just like with a can of paint to go put like the 60th grid box down.
With the world's largest tape measure, trying to work out exactly where it goes.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Shall we do the occasional segment? Does anybody at Red Bull still have a job?
Just to make sure we keep it occasional, sure. Oh, we're specifying Red Bull this week, huh?
Well, there's nobody else on the list. They're all Red Bull drivers and the team.
I mean, Stroll, but we know why he has a job.
Oh man, he was such a petulant child in one of the pre-race interviews. He was sitting on the couch and he was just like not looking at the camera, paying attention, and then somebody asked him a question. He's like, "I'm sorry, I wasn't paying it." He like looks and it's like he couldn't remember what the question was. I'm like, dude, just don't turn up. If you're not going to do it, just don't bother. Just go home.
He binned it really hard in FP3 too, didn't he?
He did, and I think this was pre-binning it.
Yeah.
But good work on the team, and happy that he didn't bin it. So that's something.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything bad about the Alpine mechanics. They're certainly doing their end of the job.
Okay, going to have to explain that one.
Well, the mechanics are doing a good job putting this work of Stroll's bashing the car into a wall back together.
Oh, you said Alpine. I would hope it was the Aston Martin team that put the car back together.
No, they're doing a good job doing their job. If only the driver could also do his job.
Yeah, but it's not really a job; it's more a hobby. Does Sergio Perez still have a job? I'm pretty sure it's a big fat no at this point.
As of time of recording, yes. Hold on, let me refresh Twitter one more time.
I have been doing the same because I've been waiting for it. All the spy footage of Danny shaking hands with various people and looking very jazzed, and taking a helicopter with Max and looking really jazzed. I don't know what's going on. Apparently they're meeting on Monday.
Let's see, Perez latest. Nope. I do have a thought, or people are talking about the Venezuelan exit poll though. Apparently there's a Perez somewhere in there. All right.
Fascinating. What was interesting is clearly Perez didn't have a job. We'll talk about his performance, I think, in the race. But it was also a statement that apparently Danny is right on the bubble, and the choice is not who do you put in the Red Bull seat. It's actually Danny's not in the VCARB seat next week, or after the summer break. He's out.
Yeah, because he's in the Red Bull seat.
But the phraseology is if they choose to put somebody else into the Red Bull seat, let's say a Liam or a Yuki, or they keep Perez in it, Danny's still out of a drive. He is not staying in the VCARB for the rest of the season. He is.
He got points today.
He got 1 point because someone got disqualified.
He got 2 points because someone got disqualified. Because he was in 10th, wasn't he?
I thought he was in 11th and got the advantage because of a certain
on.
cheater.
Oh, he was in 10th, yes. Alcon must have come around because he was in 10th for a while, so... Yeah. But he still got a point.
Yep. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's still driving at the end of August in Zandvoort. And then last but not least, and maybe again a preview that we'll dig into with our race analysis, is what is going on at Red Bull. It is pure chaos over there.
I think two things. One, Hannah Schmidt is still doing her job. Go Hannah.
Yep.
Two, please refer to the Hungaroring podcast, also titled Hubris.
Indeed. It is important to note, though, that Red Bull and Helmut Marko decided that Max should possibly not be sim racing, because apparently he stays too late and he needs sleepy bye-byes.
Wasn't it the sim race at Spa, too?
No.
Okay.
But he was... No, wait. You are right. It was a Spa.
Because I think he made a reference somewhere in this weekend after qualifying of like, well, I got a lot of good laps in the rain on the sim, like kind of implying, well, it's not all a loss.
So what happened in qualifying?
There was rain.
There was rain, and yet again, it failed to deliver.
I'm not quite. Why do you think it failed to deliver? Because I'm not entirely sure to go that far.
Because I think the qualifying order was just qualifying order. It was basically the trend that has been going on for the past 5 or 6 races. I don't think it didn't spice it up. It didn't make it different. It didn't add any jeopardy into the situation. It was just rain, and it was at the wrong time, and it didn't happen in the middle, and it was kind of fun. There was no, you've got a crappy time, but you were out first, but now the rain came, and now you're in pole, like, what was his face? K-Mag last year in Brazil. Like, it was just, it's just rain.
I'll push on that for 2 reasons. Push back on that for 2 reasons. One, Perez chunked it on the front row, and he hasn't been able to do that all season, let alone in the dry. So he actually did something good.
But was it because of the rain?
Well, if it's not, then it totally misses my second point, which is world driver champion, maybe in waiting, Lando Norris, was nowhere in the rain.
He was nowhere. And he's usually pretty good in the rain, actually.
And we talk about, everybody always says, rain is the great equalizer. Rain is what separates, the wannabes from the true champions. And Max was up near the front.
Yep.
Lewis was up near the front. Charles was up near the front, which a little deflates my argument, but Charles does know how to drive in the rain. And Lando, it was to the point of, and it kind of happened in the race, of Lando and McLaren did not make Max pay for that engine penalty.
No, they didn't.
Specifically Lando.
Yep, they did not. They did not.
So that is why I will push back a little bit on it, because with the pace that McLaren has showed, not only in the race, but kind of over the last couple weekends, I think they could have been on the front row in the dry.
That's interesting. Yes, okay. I'm not wanting to subscribe to your newsletter, but I will buy one issue.
Fair enough. That's how we get you.
Exactly. Then I'm going to be stuck with buying it for the rest of my life because the cancellation involves calling someone, and I don't make phone calls. Mercedes' practice performance was so bad on Friday. So bad that they took the massive upgrade that they brought and just YOLO'd into the weekend. Which actually seemed to work at the end of the day because the car worked in both the race and in qualifying because they managed to stick it on P. It was P4 before the engine penalty.
Nice.
That happened there. So that was interesting. I think it just proves that correlation doesn't mean causation. So I don't know what's going on with them.
Also, good job on Merc for recognizing this doesn't work and just tossing it away before the weekend. I mean, how many times in the past have we seen Merc push down a bad strategy for way too long?
Think of how many teams bring their upgrade and they're like, well, we're just going to keep rolling with it. So yeah,
we brought it. We should run it.
And it just wasn't working. So credit to them for doing that. It did give us the greatest opportunity to increase the stat that we know that Leclerc inherits P1, and we know what that means. And he did it pretty well, actually. I thought he actually did a pretty good job of getting up there with Max, although Max was half a second down the road with his brand new spanking shining engine.
Sure. So. To be fair, it's purely when Leclerc puts it on pole on merit that we have a Max Verstappen win.
I see. There is no penalties are not allowed to make that happen.
Right, because honestly, Max looked great in the rain.
Yeah.
Shame he had an engine penalty great in the rain.
Yes. But it did not materialize in the race, which I think raises a bunch of other questions. My last comment on the wet qualifying, no one binned it. I was very, both from it would have spiced it up a little bit, but also I'm surprised that they managed to keep it on the road.
That is the one bit I will say where this wet qualifying didn't live up to that, as we didn't have any cars going, oh no, and, going careening into a gravel trap somewhere. Because it's Spa and it has lovely gravel traps.
It has lovely trees for you to look at while you're waiting to be rescued. You've got a nice walk back through the forest. It's all good.
Where you can have a good cry.
Exactly.
No one can see you cry in the forest.
I think George was crying before he found out that... Well, I'm not going to break it up there.
I do have to say, I love Spa as a track so much. I love the elevation changes. I love the trees. I love the straights. I love the corners. It's a great track.
I've been rewatching these old races, and it's been interesting to see when Spa came onto the calendar, because it used to be somewhere that wasn't Spa, that was the original Belgium track. But then Spa came on, and all the trees are really short and stubby, and kind of it doesn't look as nice as it does today. And it's quite interesting to see in hindsight the effect that, I know it's
Old growth forest.
Old growth forest like can make a difference, but at the same time, it's only like 30 years. It's actually it's not that old a growth. So
I don't think it's technically an old growth forest yet.
No, not yet. Although, given how long we waited for them to get on with the race today, because it was, it's the wrong time zone. It should be in my time zone. I might as well be old growth. So, race.
Sure, we've rambled enough.
Yes. There was no safety car. Where was it? Like, how can this? I don't understand how it's possible to make it through this entire race without a safety car. And was it one retirement, Guan Yu Zhou?
Yes.
And he didn't even bin it. It just decided it didn't want to deal with it. So, it's terrible. Which leads to the fact that this race was all about strategy. It was 100% strategy. I don't think there was anything particularly about how you raced other drivers. And I thought that was interesting, but it was good and it was exciting and different.
Yeah, I don't think I can complain about it, because I think a couple races ago I complained that we should have just a strategy race, make Monaco a strategy race or something like that. Strategy races can be fun, and this was interesting. It was good. They shortened the DRS down the Kemmel Straight this year, and it also had a tailwind, and I think it really made track position king more so than we even thought going into it. And as much as, that helped out a driver who I tend to root for in Max, it also helped out George, at least on the track, holding off Lewis with his older tires. And great job for George on actually making a one-stop working instead of just going backwards through the field all the way.
Did it work, though? Did it really work?
I mean, he
crossed
the line first.
Win?
He crossed the
line first. But does that count? If you get disqualified because you cheated to get your one-stop strategy, does that still count?
If they have to do an in-lap at Spa and George is able to pick up rubber and marbles, is his car underweight?
I think it would have been a lot closer, but I bet you it would have been by 100 grams.
Yeah, I think it would still been underweight. We'll talk about this more, because there's some interesting spice that you can talk about with that. George was DQ'd from his win, by the way. If you don't watch the races and you just listened to this podcast, George won the race and was DQ'd. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy who was crying on the podium, and Lewis got the win because he was in second place, and he would have got him probably if he'd had 2 more laps. But, there's always 2 more laps, and what if it's not in a true story?
At least he knows where to go grab the number 1 trophy from. It's not like it's going to be hidden from somebody else.
True, and I have seen on social media that they have already handed the P2 trophy to Oscar Piastri.
All right, and that means Charles gets 3rd.
Yes, it's great. Charles gets a podium again. Good job, Ferrari. What else was interesting about this race that went on and things happened?
Well, should we talk about Perez?
Yeah, let's talk about Perez. So let's open this with the what the hell happened to Red Bull.
I mean, what the hell happened to Red Bull? They stopped listening to Adrian Newey for some stupid reason.
Yeah, why would you do that? I don't understand.
Text me if you want my thoughts.
So Perez, let's see. He didn't help the team at all in any way whatsoever.
I would say he actually hurt the team in some ways whatsoever.
Yes.
It was. So he started on the front row, and he ended up 40 seconds behind the leader, but he did do an extra pit stop to try to get the fastest lap point because there was a gap behind him. So we can say he finished about, I think it was 22, 21 seconds off the lead, starting on the front row. That's terrible.
Oh, it's absolutely awful.
There's no way around it. That's terrible. And then, he was just towing George along when Max looks like he could get George several times. Yeah.
And then, but then even when George got past him, it was weird that he didn't help Max do that.
Yeah, it's if you want to save your seat, hey, how can you help Max? And they just kind of pitted him to be let's get him out of the way because we're not sure he will help Max.
Maybe when they signed the contract, as part of trying to get him to take the poison chalice, he had the "you must move over for Max" conversation, and therefore they changed it. He did later in the race at some other point did move over for Max, but I think at that point he knew it was a lost cause.
They were on a much different strategy at that point in time, and yeah. But
it was so bad. I mean, just straight off the line, and Lewis is right there, and hi, my piece of road, what are you doing? And the Merc shouldn't be that fast. You've got the Red Bull. It's supposed to be fast everywhere and amazing, and it's got the magical DRS. And even when he had the DRS, but just before he lost it, he couldn't. It was strange. I'm like, what is Perez doing? Is he like given up? Has his soul been taken from him?
It's also weird in the sense of, if I told you at the start of the race there was going to be a Red Bull that started P2 and a Red Bull that started P11, and they finish P4, P7,
P8,
P7 after the penalty. So one starts P2, one starts P11. They finish P4, P7. You don't think it's the guy who started in P2 that finished 7th.
No, you don't.
Like,
you really, really don't.
For also them being on relatively the same strategy.
Yep. Yeah. And just whatever happened to Perez between 2023 and 2024, he can't drive the car, and he shouldn't. I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but like, there is more opportunity. Bird in hand with two in the bush. This is not the case, right? You need to move on and take some new birds and give them an opportunity to see what might happen.
Well, I think I saw a thing on Twitter earlier in the season about how Perez has actually gotten worse in every year of his contract. It's not even like, how did he get bad from like 23 to 24? It's like, how did he get bad from 21 to 24? Because like that first year he was with Red Bull, he was relatively close with Max.
Yeah.
And then like it's just gone downhill since then, to the point of, it's like, does Max even have a teammate at this point?
Max was quoted after the race saying, the problem is the car, stop talking about my teammate. And in hindsight of your statement just then, it just makes me realize that Max just doesn't care about his teammate, because it's like, it's irrelevant on so many different ways, because they're not the same skill level, they're not fighting for the same positions. Like, it's fascinating to think about it from that perspective. So not a good race for Red Bull, not a good race for Perez.
Is there a track you think Red Bull will be good on for the rest of the season?
Given the last few tracks that we've had, and that they have been quite varied and they have been quite different, and they've been slowly but surely going back, the big answer is no. I think they need to revisit and rethink whatever upgrades they were doing, because they brought upgrades in Hungary. They said in Hungary that the new bodywork that they'd bought that was only on Max's car wouldn't be on Max's car at Spa, because it was for different high downforce, different requirements on the track. And so they've still got the upgrade, but that upgrade, unlike Merc, who seemed to recognize their upgrade wasn't working, I think it's actively made it worse, and they need to have a rethink and go back to maybe the car at the beginning of the season and just see how that runs again, because it's ridiculous. It's absolutely bonkers.
Or the car at the end of last season, the Newey car.
Yes, exactly. Which I think they are. I don't think the regulations change between 23 and 24, so they technically could do that. And I suspect they could, even within the regulations, bring it and run it on the track in a free practice session. Like, run it in FP1, except that you don't get all the fuel load, and then go run the other one in FP2 and hope that the conditions are close enough and be like, okay, so was this any different? Maybe they did what Merc did in 2021, where there actually isn't a 23 car anymore, and it's just been massaged into the new car, and they can't really build the 23 car again.
Maybe. It's interesting for sure.
It's not good. So what else happened? There were some cars. They went around a bit. The strategy. George, in his bright-eyed and bushy-tailed love and passion, and the one thing he truly knows how to do is ask for a one-stop strategy. As we said at the beginning, he almost pulled it off, but I was like, oh, he's going to say one stop, because, one stop is what his thing. It's his code word, and he didn't. But the real spice here is, according to Lewis, he and the team had talked about a single stop, and they said, no, you can't do that. It won't work. And then they gave it to George, which raises the question, who were they sabotaging? Were they trying to sabotage Lewis again, but this time not with the car, but just with the strategy, and be like, no, we're going to make George win? Or, secretly deep down, were they trying to sabotage George to keep him in his place? It's become an addiction for them. They don't know how else to do their racing except to sabotage the cars. What are we to do? What are they to do?
Are we just moving past and starting to talk more about takes and rumors, or do we have anything more to talk about in the race?
I don't know. There wasn't a lot that really happened in it. I mean, it was a good race. It was fun. But at the same time, nothing really happened.
Oscar Piastri was really fast, and Lando Norris kind of wasn't.
Yeah, Oscar was doing great until he wasn't, and then he kind of stalled out for a while, and then he woke up again.
I think it was the case. Oscar even kind of pointed it out, of clean air for that car was king, and I think Lando was just stuck behind too much dirty air. And on top of that, I don't think his pit wall was on top of things, because Max was able to undercut him, get around him, and then even in the second stop, it was hammer time.
This is the paradox of when you have a policy in a team like Mercedes did, which is first car gets first refusal of the strategy. And I feel like McLaren tried to do that, but didn't play it right, because maybe they should have stopped Lando, not because it would have let him get in front of Oscar, but because it would have given him a more opportunity and not to get the undercut.
It works well when you have two cars well up the road, like Merc did for all those years. Yeah, sure, first car gets first right, but when you're battling it out, in amongst a gaggle of traffic, like they knew the hard tires were lasting well. They knew Max had to pit again, and they knew Max was going to go on the medium, and they knew
he didn't have any hards,
right? And they knew the undercut was powerful. So why do you not make sure Lando's in before Max and try to do the undercutting and try to undercut Max?
Because they don't know how to race, because they're not a world championship winning team.
Exactly.
I was very curious with Oscar managing to put a wheel out all the time. I think he did it twice, maybe 3 times, and didn't seem to lose any time. And then finally at the end, I think he finally, grasped it and saw that there was an opportunity to be having. I do deeply question, and I understand why Mercedes said race, but my theory on a less spicy take is that when you're in a situation like that where there isn't really anything on the line except maybe if they take each other out, you shouldn't ask one driver to give up for the other one, but you should give them the information that enables them to make the decision as kind of the test of their mettle as a driver. Because if you give George the information that's like, Oscar is rocking up behind you hilariously quick, you should think about that when Lewis rocks up behind you and maybe reconsider what your strategy is. We want the 1-2. Let's make this as stress-free as possible. I feel like the right thing to do potentially would have been to let Lewis past and then keep going with him to try and keep Oscar away, because they're titter-tattling and trying to work out who's going to do and defend, and that is what let Oscar get up to within DRS zone on Lewis.
Sure, but I think earlier in the race, George was in a Red Bull sandwich and nobody could make inroads one way or the other for the longest time. So I think George also knew that, like, yeah, even if Oscar rocks up, he's not getting around Lewis with a DRS. Like, so I'm fine.
True, but it was looking real close. It only needed someone who occasionally puts a foot wrong, whose name begins with G and ends in Orge, to put one foot wrong, and it's all gone out the window.
Yeah, but who's to say? I honestly think George races his best with Lewis right behind him, because that is the measuring stick that he has probably held himself to for a while. And I think he races his best with Lewis right there, and Lewis was right there. And if he lets Lewis go, then I think there's a stronger chance he bends it with Oscar instead of with Lewis.
Oh, that's so depressingly true. Oh dear. Is there anything else in the race?
Oh, overall, good race. I like Spa. It's great and how long the lap is. So, like, you really got to get your strategy right, just in the sense of, like, oh, that undercut is powerful because it's another 2 minutes before you're going to be around again. Like, we should have more crazy long tracks on the calendar.
Yes, especially when they have a mix of fast and slow, which is great. Unlike Monza, which is just fast.
Or Singapore, which is just corners.
Exactly. 90-degree corners all the way. So, driver of the day, our take, and the driver who couldn't wait for the day to be over, our vote. So, I'm going to say the driver of the day, for me, is Perez. Because Perez showed us exactly how you screw up a P2 without crashing the car. I think that was just exemplified, and he just gave us a masterclass, and we should reward him for that by giving him the driver of the day.
Fair enough. I like to kind of think this is like who actually had the best drive.
Yeah.
But sure. And I thought Lewis did a really great job today.
He did.
I had somebody else in mind, but I ended up DQing them. So I'm just going to give it to Lewis.
You can't give drive of the day to George because George is annoying.
And you know, you can't get DQ'd and win driver of the day because but I thought Lewis, starting from P3 on the grid, quickly moving up into P1. I mean, in a sense, Lewis looks back, like for
yes.
how many times we've seen him kind of like languishing in P6, P7, P8 in recent years. Lewis now seems back. Like crunch the numbers, and he needs like 12.7 points each weekend on max to the end of the season to win the championship. Like, I'm not going to say no, because I think he got those 12 points again today. Like,
Yeah.
And with how that Red Bull's looking, like this championship could come very close by the time we hit Abu Dhabi. It might not, but it could come very close.
I would like a proper, like, 5 or 6 way championship fight in Abu Dhabi. I think that would make Abu Dhabi live up to its cost of becoming the last race of the season.
If we had a 5-way, if 5 people were somehow in contention for the title in Abu Dhabi, I would love for the stewards to suspend the like any sort of penalties. Like no 10 seconds, no 5 seconds. There's no penalties for, intentionally causing a collision, things like that. We're just going to let you all race and go for it. Because, like, sure, you can take somebody out, but maybe, like, you also don't get, or you get taken out, or it hurts you and you don't go forward. So, like, yeah.
All out chaos.
Yeah, for essentially, if you are mathematically able to win the championship, we're not going to give you a penalty for any on-track racing incident. Like pit lane speed leading, absolutely. False start jumping, absolutely. Yeah. But if you're mathematically eliminated, then like you still get the full penalty. So if we have like Perez go charging into somebody, like, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. But back to your point about Lewis having such a good race. I thought it was, and Lewis being back, I agree, because I think there's 2 things that really stood out for me. One, he has had some pretty bad starts over the last 2 years, and he's been nailing them recently. Like, they're good starts. And on top of that, Lewis has always in his career, at least since he started winning championships, has been a bit of a cautious, shall we say, first turn / first lap driver. He kind of wakes up at the end of the first or second lap and gets going. But he was boom, straight on it. He was going for it. There was no languishing. He was his elbows out. It was beautiful. Love it. I want to see Lewis all over the place again. It's brilliant.
I think he's having fun again.
I think he is having fun.
All right, so who is
he has nothing? He doesn't care because he's got to drive for next year in a different car. So what does it matter?
So who's your driver who couldn't wait for the day to be over?
It was George, because he really couldn't wait. He was so excited. He was just like, "Yeah, I got one over on Lewis." So excited, and then it was ripped from his arms, and it was beautiful. But he was so excited, he just couldn't wait. He just couldn't wait for it to be over because it was so fantastic.
I went with Lando Norris, just on the extent of he could not get past Max Verstappen. He knows he needs to get past Max Verstappen. I think he wants to win the world championship, and I think he sees like, oh, Red Bull's vulnerable and I can do it. And man, this was like the momentum swing in this championship from Lando not being able to get past Max this weekend. It like, I'm kind of reminded of like what it was like 2017 or 2018 where Ferrari had that, I think it was 2017, where Ferrari had that real run of dominance over McLaren or over Mercedes, and it looks like Lewis might not win and Sebastian was going to win, and then they just imploded in the second half of the season. And I feel like Spa today was kind of a similar one of those. Like,
yeah,
there's just a little bit of writing on the wall of like, oh no, somebody's about to implode.
As a great example of McLaren not quite maybe being able to pull it up, one of the things that came out just before the race this weekend was they said that they will be meeting over the winter break to work out what their policy should be in the context of helping Lando win the Drivers' Championship. Like, based on the call of last week of like maybe they should have let Lando win to enable him to be within shooting chance of getting the Drivers' Championship. And it feels a little bit like that it's like they're like a beat behind making the right decisions, and Lando is sitting there. Maybe he can't convert it, but nobody's helping him either.
No, you need to have that conversation over the summer break, like now, because I mean,
ideally, you should have had it like 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, but I mean, the next best time is tomorrow.
Yes.
One of those situations, because like you think about this is Mercedes is looking good all of a sudden. Max is looking frustrated. And maybe he's open to switching teams. The Red Bull looks like it's nowhere. But next year you're going to have Lewis in a Ferrari, and we all know what Lewis can do. The Mercedes looks good again. Like, you could end up in a spot where you went from having the fastest car to the third fastest car, and the opportunity slipped. Like what it was 2009 or something 2008, where BMW could have won the championship with Kubica. And decided, nope, we've won the race. That was the goal for the year. We're now all in on the 2009 car. And they totally didn't even get that right at all. And if they just would have continued in 2008, they would have won the championship because they had a car that was that good. There's a case sometimes of you gotta Yeah, and it's not just in Formula One. You see this in other sports too. I saw an analysis at some point in time of like, is it better to, win a championship now or try to win one later? And the thing is, like, you always try to win a championship now when you can, because like your season ticket sales will be much higher for like the next 10 years than even if you were just a contender for like those 10 years. Like one championship can make a franchise that much more financially sound.
And it has a multiplier effect. If you win when you weren't expecting it because something else changed and you were able to capitalize on it, that will stand you in good stead when you are set up to win the championship and it's not somebody else screwing up. And now you have that sense. You know how you can dominate and get it right, and know how you can parlay one championship into 2 or 3 or 4.
And this also comes back to when Merc signed Danny, Rick, and I think Lando at the time. Because that was the first time that Mercedes hadn't had at least one world champion winning driver in their lineup in a long time.
Wait, you said Merc?
Sorry, McLaren.
And they hadn't had a championship driver when they had Carlos and Lando.
Oh, maybe that was it then, when they had Carlos and Lando. I know there was a time, as soon as Fernando left the team, it was like, oh shit, this is big for McLaren, because this is the first time in a long time they hadn't had a former championship winning driver in the seat. Between, because they were always able to get one of those drivers in, or a driver of that sort of pedigree, because
Nando,
they had the car.
Button, Lewis,
Kimi.
No, wait, that's not right. Kimi was after that one.
No, but Kimi was. I mean, Kimi did end up winning. He was
of that caliber.
Yeah, and Mika, Senna. Like, no, it was a long. It's like you go back in. Yeah, I guess Kimi was technically before, but you could argue Kimi got screwed over by some regs, and that's why he didn't win with McLaren.
What was it? 11 retirements in 14 races in 2002.
And he was still
sabotaged his car.
Yeah. But man, like, it was just one of those things of McLaren could no longer get the top driver quality they wanted, and it showed. And now you're in this situation again where you could be the McLaren of old again, and I feel like they're throwing it away.
But could Oscar step up? Could it be Oscar? Could Oscar, as he matures in his third season, where I feel like that's where you start to see the true skills of that driver? Could that be it? Could we have an Australian winner?
I mean, did Bruce win? Bruce is a Kiwi.
Yes, but Alan Jones is an Australian.
Okay. So. Honestly, looking at how Oscar races, I think he's better than Lando as of next season, if not the tail end of this season.
I agree with that sentiment.
I think
that is a very spicy take.
I think this is Lando's one and only shot to win the Drivers' Championship.
Yep, I agree. Hard agree. You had one honorable mention for couldn't wait to be done with the day.
Yeah, I also think he could not wait to be done with the season, or maybe his contract at this point, and that's Fernando Alonso. He seems to be having a no good, very bad time.
I feel really bad for Fernando Alonso.
Oh, I never feel bad for Fernando Alonso.
Oh, but I do. I understand that he is problematic on a number of different levels, but I feel like I just want the luck to turn his way for him.
No,
just one time.
He can't. He made the bet of, I want to be a Formula One world champion. He is a 2-time Formula One champion, and this is what happens to him.
His only choice to save face is to take a sabbatical from Formula One. Not retire from Formula One, but take a sabbatical.
Oh, just like Mika.
Exactly. He could come back any time now.
Yeah.
Any time now.
Yeah. I don't feel bad for Fernando, because in a lot of situations he made his bed and had to lie in it.
Multiple times.
But, I do. He does seem not as happy to drive that Aston Martin as he once did.
And I want to know what happened, because like even at the beginning of this season, he was kind of jazzed about it. He was like willing to try it, but maybe it's because they've made no progress and he realized that he's continued to make the poor choice. And when the Mercedes called him up, maybe he should have said yes.
Oh, we haven't done our Kimi Antonelli check because there was an F2 race.
So I did watch that, and the sprint race doesn't really count because they called it off after 7 laps because it was a bit wet, and they don't like people running in the wet because they're young children and they might get a bit damp and catch a cold or whatever.
I mean, there wasn't death in F2 a couple of years ago, so
no, but I understand that. But like yes, I mean F1 also. But in the feature race today, He was looking okay at first. He was like, he got a good start on the line. He got past some people. I'll come back to what he did do in the sprint race in a moment. And it looked pretty reasonable. But then I don't really know what happened because he ended up in third because he was trying a different pit strategy. And the undercut is clearly hilariously powerful because he went down to 17th and basically made his way up to like 14th. And bear in mind, he had started in like 6th and made his way up to like 5th through actual overtakes on the first lap. And then it went. The one saving grace that means he might get the seat because maybe he's amazing is in the wet race, I think on the third lap, he comes down from La Source and he basically gets himself between the barrier and the other car, and I can't remember who it was, and he pins it, and he just puts his foot down and he does not back up all the way through Eau Rouge. Like, he goes straight into Eau Rouge, up into was it Radion?
Yeah.
And then up into the Kemmel Straight, and he just pins that, and he's just like, once he gets through Eau Rouge, the other driver like wusters out and goes, I'm not doing that. And so he clearly has the bravery to get him through. And then of course today, Toto was quoted as saying, well, it looks like Kimi's our only choice, unless Max changes his mind, but I don't think that's happening. So.
The only thing I will say is, is Kimi the second coming until Kimi's son gets to Formula 2. But I also think it's one of those of Spa in the rain. I wouldn't be surprised like how many people would back out of a move like that. Like, I don't want to die. Like if it's any other track, definitely great move. But I think sometimes Eau Rouge and Radion, especially in the wet, just favor the extremely bold, maybe foolish. Yep. And yes. So while it was a good move, I'm not necessarily going to be like, yes, super bold, exactly what I want in my racing car driver who, you know, I have a cost cap and I don't want to have to spend extra on parts because I have an extremely bold racing driver.
True, but that is maybe that's the bit of everybody that says that he's like Max again. But because I feel like that would have been Max in 2016
before there was a cost cap.
True, before there was a cost cap. True.
Would Max survive in Red Bull with a cost cap?
Ooh, interesting. I like that.
If we go back to like 2017 Max, he was causing a lot of damage for that Red Bull team.
That's a really interesting point. Like, despite him being amazing, do you have to clip his wings? Do you kick him out?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's very interesting. Spicy takes and rumors?
I think Lewis is clearly better than George Russell in a good car because George only knows how to drive bad cars because of the amount of times he spent in the Williams.
I think there is something strong and there is an essence in this that I'd love to, like, I feel like I want to see there's something in there and I don't know what it is, but I agree. And I think it's because it all comes down to the fact that Lewis he knows that if it's not on for the real win, there's no point in trying. And I think every other time, George is like, I'll try anything, anytime, just to get my win. I'll try that one-stop strategy, even if it means cheating.
I don't think we've talked enough about the disqualification of George Russell from this race today.
What would you like to add to it? Or shall I give the stat that I briefly researched and I'm probably wrong on?
Yes.
Okay, so Mercedes, the great team that they are, the 8-time serial champions, have been disqualified from a race or qualifying more times than any other team in the turbo hybrid area. Like, there's something in that. This is the third time in recent memory that Mercedes have been disqualified. There's something going on there, and I think there is something very suspicious.
I think there's even something more suspicious going on. Did you read any of the FIA docs following the...
I saw some summaries of them, which talks about the fuel and that they measured it and it was correct, and then they took the fuel out and it wasn't.
I apologize for reading on the podcast, but I am just going to read the technical delegates report verbatim. After the race, car number 63, that's George Russell, was weighed, and its weight was 198.0 kilograms, which is the minimum weight required by TR Article 4.1. After this, fuel was drained out of the car, and 2.8 liters of fuel were removed. The car was not fully drained according to the draining procedure submitted by the team in their legal documents, as TR Article 6.5.2 was fulfilled. The car was weighed again on the FIA inside and outside scales, and its weight of 796.5 kilograms. The calibration of the outside and inside scales was confirmed and witnessed by competitors. As this is 1.5 kilograms below the minimum weight required, They're referring to the matter for the stewards for consideration. So it's interesting to me of the teams are required to legally drain out the fuel per the thing, and they left fuel in. They knew.
See, this is comes back to 3 times.
Right? Because why else would you not unless you know this thing is underweight?
Yeah, just drain the whole thing and get on with it because that's what you're supposed to do.
That's what you're supposed to do. They didn't. And it's also, they drained out just enough to make the exact minimum weight.
And maybe that's what triggered them and made them seem like a bit suspicious. The FIA, that is. They looked at it and it's like, that's odd that it's exactly right. How did they pull that off?
I mean, I figure the teams are good enough that they know exactly how to do it at just the right minimum weight. I mean, I guess there is something there of like, did your tires degrade more than you thought they would if you thought you were going to run on a hard strategy? In fact, maybe that's why they ended up leaving the fuel in, because they thought they were going to two-stop, and thus George burned more rubber off the car than they thought they would.
And maybe that's the case, but that doesn't... There's a difference between... And I think there's no different outcome where they don't get disqualified based on what actually happened. But how you choose to react is really your measure of your morals.
It's the cover-up that gets you.
Exactly.
It's not the crime, it's the cover-up. Just ask Richard Nixon.
Exactly, and he has a lot of experience in this.
Yes. So yeah, to me, it's not the crime, it's the cover-up. It's the fact of, oh, you didn't drain all the fuel out of the car. They realized you didn't drain all the fuel out of the car, and you were perfectly at the right weight. And was it just a case of strategy of we thought George was going to have more tires than not? Because I can imagine, 1.5 kilograms, you're talking 400 grams per tire. Yeah, if you're thinking a tire change, I could envision 400 grams of marbles coming off a tire. What's that? Almost a pound? About a pound?
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe that's a bit much, but still, like, there's still some stuff there of, hey, and maybe, if George isn't leading the race so tightly, he goes offline a little bit towards the end to pick up some marbles and just add a little bit more weight to the car.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Spa, they don't do an in-lap, so it's like, it's not one of those things of, and maybe to be fair, they're always cheating like this and they know they can pick up marbles and they just somehow forgot that in Spa we don't do this.
I still have a strong feeling that they shouldn't weigh the car with the wheels on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because it's the pickup marbles has been a thing that's for 20 years. It's not new, and I just don't understand why they continue to do it. Like, measure the wheel without the tire on it and weigh that. Measure the car without its wheels on after it's been drained of its fluids, and there you go. You get your math, and it all makes sense because then you can eliminate the tire because the tire's managed by Pirelli, so there's very little opportunity for cheating there, and it just feels make it simple. But yet here we are, and it's strange and it's weird. But yet again, I'm going to repeat: Mercedes disqualified 3 times in 4 years. It's a bit suspicious.
Yeah, it's not the first time this has happened with them. That's for certain. Then the other thing was, and we just kind of talked about it, is I don't think McLaren has what it takes to win a championship. I don't think Lando's World Driver Championship material after that, because the best drivers in the World Championship, that's a bad sentence, usually do well in the rain. And Lando did absolutely crap in the rain on qualifying, and he didn't make it up in the race.
So here's the thing. If you're McLaren, and I think it is fair to allow the team a season or so to really build their muscle to be ready for properly fighting it. Like, there's no excuse for them not trying this season. They need to go for it. But if you were to replace Lando, who would you replace Lando with?
Oh, I'm not sure I'd replace Lando. I think Lando is the best caliber driver they can put in there. I'm just saying, like, some people rag on Jenson Button for his abilities and winning a World Driver Championship. But at the end of the day, he was the best driver in the Brawn at the time. Like, that's just how it is. I think Lando's a good driver. Like, I wouldn't, like, maybe Charles. Like, are we talking drivers on the
Carlos?
Are we talking drivers Carlos? Maybe, but yeah, are we talking drivers on the open market, or are we just talking like any driver?
I think drivers that are close or on the open market.
Well, yeah, I think Carlos is a good shout.
Because he could have stayed. They could have kept him.
Yeah.
They could have somehow stopped him from going to Ferrari.
But yeah, maybe Carlos and Oscar is actually the best lineup for McLaren at that point in time. But I think it's just, I crunched the numbers last weekend, and with Lando getting the 7 points, if Lando had been allowed to keep the win, he would have needed 6.7 points a race weekend instead of 6.9 off of Max to win the championship. With Max finishing 1 spot ahead of Lando today, it is now up to 7.8 points per weekend. And while that Red Bull does not look strong, with the strength of the Mercedes right now and how good Oscar looks, and one of the tracks being Monza and Ferrari being there, like, I don't know if Lando can get almost 8 points a weekend on Max.
How many points does McLaren need to get the Constructors' Championship?
Less, a lot less. That is a much easier shout because like they are 42 points down. We have 10 weekends left, so they only need 4.2 points on Red Bull per weekend. So yeah, I think they're going to get the Constructors, but
unless they replace someone in the other seat,
or if Mercedes comes on really strong, because Mercedes is surprisingly far down, but their run of form recently looks really good. But Ferrari's also right there with 345 points to Red Bull's 408. So it's not like Ferrari's out of it either if they can, have good races.
So 5-way Drivers' Championship, 4-way Constructors' Championship.
It's looking like that.
And the one driver that's not in it is Sergio Perez.
Yeah, he's down in 7th in the driver standings.
Ooh. Is he behind or in front of Lewis?
He is now behind Lewis. He is in a Mercedes sandwich.
Shall we move on to some predictions for the 4 weeks from now excitingness in the Dutch province of Zandvoort?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. I think Max isn't going to win.
That would make me sad.
I know, because it's his home race, and I feel like he needs to pick me up. I think Perez is in the V-carb. Danny is in the reserve seat and is not driving in any team. Yuki is the one that gets put in the Premier Red Bull fizzy drinks car. And Liam takes Yuki's seat at V-carb. And then George wins on a 4-stop strategy.
On a 4-stop?
Well, you got to switch it up from attempting to win on a 1-stop strategy, which he gets like at least partial credit for, and he's going to go the other way and go for a 4-stop strategy because he's achieved his life goal, at least ostensibly, of winning on his 1-stop strategy that he comes up with while racing. And so
so he's just doing the side quests first before he gets a world championship. He's just trying.
Yes, because that's exactly what George will do because he's got so much of himself. He thinks he's so amazing. He'll just start on the side quests early,
and then he could give you a PowerPoint presentation on why he's the greatest Formula One driver, even though he has maybe one championship.
Exactly, and that will only be because everybody else retired.
Right. So I think Australia is going to be able to take the Dutch in the men's team sprint at the Olympics. I think the Dutch boys look good, but I think Australia is going to be coming for them.
You need to clarify for me which sport, because this could be running, it could be
This is clearly track cycling, Dominic.
Okay, just making sure, because not all the others are fully aware and up to speed.
I believe August 5th and 6th on your local Olympics watching platform.
Is this a secret? Are you sub predicting that Danny will come back after the break and somehow beat Max?
No, he might beat Oscar though. And Australian over the Dutch in Zandvoort would be that'd be another good prediction. I'm going to add that. I'll say Australia over the Dutch also in Zandvoort.
I think it's possible.
Yeah.
You've got there's multiple routes to that success.
Yeah. But I think the Australians I think they're looking at a more complete team.
Okay.
I'm sad that a guy I know didn't make the Australian team, but that's okay because the Australian team's still looking really good. And this is kind of the last run for Medicore with the Dutch team, so as their coach. So we'll see if they can pull it off again. The guys who reinvented team sprint for the men, it'll be great. Reinvented.
As in brought true new ways of thinking about it, or resurged it back to being an Olympic sport?
Brought new ways of thinking about it, of like, hey, what if we just run a bigger gear and are really strong?
I see. So the throw some muscle at it problem.
Yes.
Solution.
There's a wonderful track cycling podcast called The Peace Take, Piste. And they had a gentleman on the other day by the name of Sam Webster, who was part of this Kiwi sprinting dynasty for the New Zealanders who were on top for a while. And they were kind of on the old school philosophy of running smaller gears. And then the Dutch boys just came along and decided, oh, hey, why are we running smaller gears? We can just be strong and run really big gears. So that's what they're doing. And The Australians are pretty much the only ones who have been able to match that in recent years, and it's been real touch and go at the World Championships. I think that's clearly the gold medal final. I don't think either one of those. I think both of those teams are going to be in the gold medal final, and I think the Dutch are going to be able to take it.
Interesting. Fun Olympic fact. Apparently, back in the 50s, town planning was an Olympic sport.
Fantastic. I do like team sprint. Team sprint's my favorite race on the track for the Olympics. I mean, the Madison's also really cool too, but it's just the team sprint's done in 42 seconds. So it's just this like all out mass sprint as a team. Like it's a very cool event.
Wait. The whole thing is 42 seconds or it just goes around for 45 minutes and the last thing is 42 seconds?
There are 3 rides. So you got your round one, which is, so there's 8 teams in the competition. Then, so you do your qualifying round to see where you rank.
Yeah.
Then they're paired up. So 1v8, 2v7. Yeah. And the fastest time will ride for gold. The 2 fastest times will ride for gold and the next 2 fastest times will ride for bronze.
Okay.
And then you have your bronze ride and your gold medal ride. So you have to do it 3 times. And each time takes about, on the pace they're doing, it'll definitely be under 44 seconds. The winning time is probably going to be like a 41.2 or 41.3.
So from the whistle of the starting gun,
yes,
to the final whistle is 42 seconds?
Yes.
Huh. Fascinating. I'm now very curious to watch this because that's the whole process of going from 0 to full pace in less than 42 seconds is fascinating to me.
I'll show you as soon as we're done recording. I'll share my screen. I'll try to show you one of these. They're great. So I think the Dutch are going to take it. We'll say, I think the Australians are going to take it, and then we say to send Australia over Dutch and Zandvoort because why the hell not? I think Danny's going to be in the Red Bull seat.
I think you're right, but I'm not willing to believe it. I'm still going for reserve seat.
And I think Liam to the Racing Bulls. I don't think they're going to put Perez in the Racing Bulls seat.
See, that's the bit that I think makes the whole musical chairs here really difficult because I feel that that's going to cause a massive contractual explosion.
But like I think Perez has the shot of being the reserve driver because essentially why would you put Perez in a V-carb seat? Because essentially you've said he has no future with the team. Like, that's why he's there. It's not like he's going to the minor leagues for a couple games to try to get his swing back or anything. Like, no, he's getting
Kvyat'd.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I'm sorry, but he might have another drive with another team, but I think his time at Red Bull is done. And I think they'd rather just buy out his contract than anything else. So at that point, you got to put Liam in the seat.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with your logic is flawless. But I just feel like contract will make this complicated.
And then, for the love of God, please, can we have a safety car again?
And why will it be because Danny crashes into the wall at turn 3 and breaks his wrist again? Sorry, Danny.
Or Perez breaks his wrist or something.
Oh, Perez. Because Christian Horner is a Machiavellian crazy person, he will allow, and Helmut Marko will concede and allow Perez to come to the weekend, and then they will cause the car to fail in such a way that it causes damage to Perez, not irreparable damage, and then they'll just have to put Danny in the car anyway, and they don't have to have the difficult conversation. Because as I have previously stated, they're all wusses, and they're letting HR talk to him about his performance.
And I'm not going to put this in the predictions, but I do think if it's a wet race or like a changing variable conditions race, as can happen on the North Sea right there, I think it's going to be a Max victory because I think he can drive that car on that track in those conditions better than anybody else. And
home field advantage.
And also Red Bull, despite their woes, are still very good on strategy and making sure Max will be on the right tires at the right time.
It's gonna be an interesting race.
It'll be good, and we have some time. We have the whole Olympics to wait and watch it. So, do you have a favorite Olympic sport that you're looking forward to watching over the next 2 weeks?
I don't really like the Olympics, but I am getting prepared to watch your cycling ones that you have recommended.
Fair enough. Is it because of the fervent nationalism?
No, I just don't find any of the sports particularly interesting.
That's fair. I was watching some canoe slalom the other day. That was very fun.
Remind me what canoe slalom is.
There's like have you ever been to like a water park and like gone around the lazy river?
Yes.
It's like a lazy river on steroids where there's like gates they have to go through and some are upstream gates, and it's like you're just at the will of how the water carries you. Because of the time zone we live in and the surfing competition being located in Tahiti, I've been watching a lot of surfing right now.
I saw that on the internet earlier, and I was not ready to believe that they actually had surfing in Tahiti, because that's not just a long way away from Paris. That's a long way away from Paris.
It's French Polynesia, man.
It is. I understand why it was logically believable, but at the same time, I was kind of like, what did they do? Did they just skip the opening ceremony? Why do they not go back? Do they have to get on a 12-hour flight?
No, you don't have to go to the opening ceremonies. In fact, there are a lot of athletes that skip the opening ceremonies for some reason or not, because I think I heard soccer complaining about it, because soccer tends to start about a week before the Olympics, because they have so many like group games and stuff to go through that they don't really go to the opening ceremonies and all. No, but their Olympic villa is a cruise ship parked in Tahiti. All right, well, once again, thank you for listening to Tinfoil Helmets. We got a bit off the rails there towards the end, but I'm happy you stayed with it. Or maybe you didn't, and you're never hearing this outro. So if you're not hearing this, what you should have known, and you probably already know, is that we're waiting for your feedback. So please write into us at feedback@tinfoilhelmets.com and let us know your conspiracies, feedbacks, and wants. And, do you think you're worthy of driving that Red Bull seat? And also, don't forget to tell your friends to like, rate, listen, and subscribe.
Oh, fuck off.
Yeah.
That literally blows my mind.